thing, because we've got a very important debate here today. But it's not a normal type of debate, a presidential debate, which means that speakers can say whatever they like on anything, as long as it's sort of on the topic roughly. They can talk for 6 minutes each, and we've got a very learned group of speakers. First question is, who is the older group of speakers here? No, there'll be no ageism in this particular debate at all. I just want to thank Lindley Hood. Lindley cannot be here. You know Lindley's a great person in this organisation. Lindley's come down with the flu. But Lindley came up with a topic which I think is a really, really good topic. And it's a great topic for town and gown. We've got students here. We've got, what do we call the group? Former students over here. All sorts of people over here. So the topic today is not waving, but drowning, keeping your head above the digital flood. All clear on that? Not waving, but drowning, keeping your head above the digital flood. I'll introduce each speaker one at a time so you get to know who they are. The first speaker to speak for 6 minutes is a wonderful Emeritus professor from the University of Otago, Professor Helen Leach. And many of you probably know Helen's work. Helen rescued the pavlova from Australia for us because she did the history of the pavlova, and Helen was able to show categorically through history that we were the first to come up with the pavlova. She's a brilliant professor. Much of her work and her books have been cited all around the world. She's done a lot of work, in fact, on New Zealand culinary, but all sorts of other things as well. She's a brilliant anthropologist and a brilliant professor, and I'm sure she's going to give you a little history lesson about digital work in New Zealand. So please give Helen a big welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's a
Today I'm going to talk about my experiences with PC. No, not political correctness, but personal computers. They were called PC 10 years before the political correctness. Consumer Magazine published its first article on home computers in 1985. It described PCs with brand names like Amstrad, Atari and Commodore. I read the article and asked my friends what sort I should buy. I couldn't afford a Mac or an IBM, but there were plenty of IBM clones. I ordered one called a Fujitec Turbo XT. It cost me the equivalent of $6,000 in today's money. I picked it up in February 1988, 30 years ago. The next month was sheer hell. Despite helpful advice and manuals, I could not get this expensive PC to work properly. Here's an excerpt from my diary. March the 5th, I had one of the most frustrating days ever. I made the mistake of getting up and sitting in front of the computer. Well, I continued my run of invalid directories and bad file names, and it added the note incorrect version of DOS when I tried to format a floppy disk. But worst of all, when I was working in Word, the cursor just froze and absolutely nothing would release it. This happened 4 times, always in Word. Phone calls to tech-savvy friends and family didn't save me from losing my file. Well, 2 days later, the technician discovered that the serial port lead was plugged in back to front inside the computer. By the end of March, the computer centre staff were making ominous comments about Fujitec's unreliability. On April the 6th, I was offered a replacement computer, another IBM clone. After a few weeks, we discovered that its hard disk had been wrongly formatted. That meant that everything had to be backed up, then restored after reformatting. Backup of the original files required 30 disks. Eventually, the second PC behaved better, and its colour monitor and enhanced colour graphics made my teenage daughter's games much more appealing. We used it for 7 years. However, at work I was running a Mac, and I got out of the habit of using MS-DOS. It made sense to have 2 Macs in my life, so in 1995 I ordered a Macintosh PowerBook 190, worth just over $6,000 in today's money. Setting up required 13 installation disks and lots of help. But I had good service from this machine, but for 5 years only. It lacked the capacity needed for working with big images. When I changed it for the clamshell iBook G3 in 2000, very distinctive looking computer, I paid more than $400 for an extra 124 megabytes of memory. God. In today's terms, this iBook cost a whopping $6,900. The clamshell iBook gave me 9 good years before it was time to upgrade software and memory once again. The year was 2010. I bought a MacBook Pro with a 17-inch screen costing a little over $4,000. As it aged, it had a tendency to forget the trackpad settings, but they were quickly re-entered. This year, after reading the forums about the implications of this habit, I decided it was time to investigate the latest MacBook Pro. Then, suddenly, there was an urgent reason to purchase one. This time it was Skype that forced my hand. For some months I'd been informed that I had to upgrade my version of Skype or lose access, but my old operating system couldn't support a new version of Skype. One Sunday, just as I prepared for my weekly chat with my family in Sydney, I received Skype's rejection notice. Desperately, we tried alternative chat facilities, but they kept crashing. I had no choice but to give in and get the new computer. Then followed 2 months of frustration, almost equivalent to what I'd experienced with that first computer 30 years ago. The forum participants had warned that the operating system High Sierra was incompatible with many versions of software. The computer had no USB ports. Trackpad routines were infuriatingly different. You had to retrain your hand. And the screen was only 15 inches. And worst of all, my efforts to get perpetual licensed versions of my familiar software were almost too late. In 2018, you're expected to rent your software and make regular payments. With no competition, the providers can charge virtually what they want. When I added up just the cost of my 5 viable computers, I found that I had spent a total of $27,800 over 30 years. That represented $926 per year, and the average cost of those computers in today's money was $5,500. Now, most of my machines were Macs, and I accept that they are more expensive than their IBM-type competitors. But my research, photography, and book writing flourished in the Mac environment. When more and more search engines came online, I found that I could search old books without having to travel to British libraries. I could submit an article to a journal and hear back from the editor in as little as 24 hours. And when stuck for a name, which happens rather more frequently as you age, I could get Professor Google to find it for me within 5 minutes. So what will be my situation in 10 years from now? I may need to find free and open source software substitutes, or try to use long out-of-date versions of my old favourites that are unsupported. I will be increasingly dependent on younger relatives and friends to get me started on new software. And I suspect there will be more moments of despair as software providers remove access if I fail to upgrade. I admit that I'm addicted to Mac computers, and that has made me vulnerable. I haven't the strength to swim against the tide, but don't want to get out of the water. Help!
What a brilliant opening. Now we have our youth team, the young team. And the first speaker is Connor Newman. He's a local young man, went to Logan Park High School, just over the park there. He's at university studying politics, philosophy, economics and law. He's head of the Debating Society, and he's got a massive assignment in my actual course. It's a massive thing due next week, and he's here today, so I'm going to give him bonus marks for whatever he has. It's a great credit for being today. Please give Connor a big welcome.
She's still love you, you know.
Marion just said she still loves you, you know.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm afraid that I can't promise to be either as polished or as relatable as the last speaker because I have no idea what the words Atari, Commodore, or DOS. And when they were mentioned, a sort of ripple of laughter went around the room, and I was thrown off for a moment. But I think the way that I should start this debate is that every time I hear a story about my parents about their past, when they went through university or how they dealt with a time before internet connectivity all the time. Every time I hear that, it convinces me that the past is a terrible place that I never want to visit. And that's especially true when they talk about anything to do with university work, because apparently you had to go to things called libraries and do research and get the actual books out. And I can do all of that from the comfort of my own home. Often I don't, often I procrastinate, but I can, still in theory, I can do all that. And also I think that something that's important to say is that I was reading an interesting article recently about how backlash doesn't just exist in this generation to the progress of technology and change. It essentially exists with every generation. The older generation produces a certain amount of backlash to any new technology or any advances in technology or anything like that. And it was quite interesting because they brought up a number of letters to the editor in newspapers dating back to 1908, back to the late 1800s, of people saying things like that the advent of like pen nibs and ink in schools was terrible because children just weren't learning how to write with slate anymore and they were losing a valuable skill, or that the advent of newspapers was terrible because it was condensing information and people were getting lazy about the way that they went and found that information. And I think that that article says two things, essentially. The first one is that it's always quite interesting to see that indication that it's not a new thing, that there's this backlash, that's happened throughout history and that's just a product of technology moving and trying to keep up with that. But the second thing that I think that I should note about that article is that I only read the article on Facebook because it was shared to me by one of my friends, and I think it's quite cool that I have access to that, and that there's this continuous culture that's been developed by this digital age of always sharing those interesting things and always providing that research and interesting articles to people. I think I speak for the rest of my team as well to say that there's something quite special from being able to see something and instantly share that with everyone that you think might benefit from that. And sometimes that's something as simple as like a cool article about letters to the editor in the 1800s. But that's still a benefit to people because that's still interesting and fun. And something that's quite important and powerful about this digital age is that we're able to provide interesting and fun things to people all the time, and you're able to connect with your friends through that. You can say, oh, I saw this and I thought you might like to share it, and you can do that immediately. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Essentially, my opinion is that the digital age is just a massive net benefit all the way across the board, and that any harms from the digital age come with the way that people use it, but aren't necessarily intrinsic to the digital age itself. I think that exists in three main ways, and the first one that I would point out is research, and that's not first because I think it's the most important, but that's first because my professor Mark Hennigan is sitting right behind me, and I want to flag that I am doing research for the project that he's talking about. But it just makes everything so much easier. From hearing the stories from my parents, like I talked about at the start, not having to go into the library and finding that the particular book that contained all the useful information that I need for the particular essay that I'm working on has been taken out by one of the other 100 people in my class that have to access that book to be able to write that essay. And just being able to sit at home and have a tube of Oreo cookies and some coffee and be able to work through the mountains of information that the internet provides to us. I think my grades would not be where they were at this point if I didn't have access to that kind of research and if I didn't have access to that. The second thing that I want to say that's a benefit, I think, is connectivity. I'm able to talk to my friends all the time. And that's obviously a product of being able to talk to my friends all the time that I expect that that's what I should be able to have. But it also makes it so much easier to organise anything. And the only reason that I'm standing here and that Nick's standing here and that Keegan's standing here is because it was so easy to reach out to the Debating Society over Gmail and organise for these speakers to attend. And that's something that the digital age has really pushed for, has really promoted. I think that that's fantastic as well. And then the final thing that I want to say is just in terms of entertainment value, the digital age provides that. And often that's overlooked because people think that, you know, grades are more important or staying connected with your friends, that's more important. But there's something, I think, intrinsically good about being able to have fun and see fun things and have those things shared to you by your friends. And as we move forward, I know that I'm going to lose touch more and more with the way in which technology progresses as well. Already virtual reality exists to a certain extent, and I have no idea how to use those things, and I doubt that I will put the effort into learning them either. But I think it's fantastic that that exists out there, and that provides that that's all good. And that provides that kind of entertainment for people. Just to wrap up, I don't want to say that you need to stay with the steady march of progress, but I don't think that it's necessary to swim against the current. I think the current is taking us in a good direction. Thank you.
Well, it's obviously that your generation are surfing the internet. They do use the internet in very creative ways. They set up a Facebook for every assignment, so you've got all these other 100 people looking, so you don't have to find quite so much on your own. They set up a Facebook for every assignment. So, and it's a very good creative way of doing things. That's how they fly along. This is my next speaker, or the next speaker is a legend, as we all know, not just in Dunedin or New Zealand, but in the world. Dame Pat Harrison, there's nothing she hasn't done in the educational field. She kept all those nice young women, I've met many of them come to university, went through Queen's High School, kept those naughty King's boys well away from them so they could come through. But she also did a lot, and this is the most important thing I've learned from people like Pat as a teacher myself. Every child, she saw the good in them. Every child, she saw the potential. And young people who probably wouldn't have got through school, Pat believed in them, and they knew that she believed in them, and she totally believed in them. No matter what their background, no matter how poorly they've done at school, Pat believed in them, and that's made the difference in their lives. She also set up the Youth Trust here, which does a wonderful job for you. She fights the good fight every day, Pat, social justice, and the ministers, right up to the Prime Minister, will listen to Pat, otherwise they'll get a good left hook. And so please give Dame Pat, one of our absolute legends, a big warm welcome. Pat.
I don't know why I'm here.
None of us know why we're here, Pat.
And I was given a topic, and the topic was not waving but drowning, keeping our heads above the digital flood. At my increasing age, I have by now a momentous span of years to look back on, all of which are covered in memories of pen and ink, of postage stamps and envelopes, of stationary telephones and telegrams,
Yes.
of cameras and photograph albums, of books in hardback or soft covers. There were no onlines or Facebooks, and the only Twitters were what I heard from birds on the tree. There were no Kindles or smartphones, no texting or emails, and all retail was in shops or markets. Well, I enjoyed that life. It was simple and uncomplicated. I had time to think. And for me, this has not changed. I do not drown in a digital age. I'm unsullied by instant communication, made pleasurable by a casual talk in the street. I fix my concentration on reading and bury my head in the newspaper for an hour or two. I have no computer. Digital is confined to a number, generally from 0 to 9, and a digital flood is curious, curious metaphorical language. Our digital age brings me nothing but astonishment, because although it is here, I am not part of it. But it does give me open-mouthed surprise. You see, you happen to say to your daughter when she phones that you had heard on CNN an amazing interview with Madeleine Albright on her book, Fascism. And while talking to me, she had found out it had been launched, so she then and there, in the span of that phone call, put in an order. No verbal inquiry, no verbal ordering, all set, done and arranged for my birthday. No magic, no excitement, no anticipation of any other present. Everything circulating through the ether. The digital age has given me an extraordinary increase in vocabulary, really, without any experience of the meaning. There is talk of blogging, of hacking, of apps, different conceptions, different meanings, all strange, and some of them absolutely lethal, capable of controlling and changing even government outcomes. Everything exposure, nothing private. And I note a lot of walking is head bowed, eyes lowered, and even muttering. Also, my imagination flicks, as it would, to the changed situation in schools. I imagine a lot of discussion around, will we ban phones outright? Will we allow them in class to help towards creating a digital responsibility? Will we provide a safe place to house them? Will we communicate with parents to talk of limiting their use at night? Are there still conversations at all around the kitchen table? And I think, what problems a phone poses now? I have escaped from this, thank God. What I have time for is time to reflect, time to assess and judge, time for family gather-ups, time to make an odd submission of pertinent things, time to hear of the number of wonderful things our social service has accomplished, time to bask in community goodwill. The poem, and our heading comes from a poem, the poem says, I was much too far out all my life, and not waving, but drowning. I expect it's the opposite for me. I am happy not to drown, for if one does not deny its existence, yet does not participate, then you can stay alive to its benefits, be wary of its drawbacks, judge what it's doing to and for humanity, calculate the magnitude of the change, and yet remain apart, far away from its foibles and invasion. That's what age can do for you. Old age. Yet still be alive to its endless possibilities.
Oh, brilliant. We've got our campus, and we take that back in 50 years' time, and it'll still be perfect. Well done, Pat. That was absolutely brilliant. Now we come to another law student. Another young man in my class. He's got this big assignment. He's probably been on Facebook now trying to find out the answers are. This is Nick Robinson, who's also a young Dunedin man. He was from John Glasgow College, and he's doing law, politics and economics, and he's also in the debating society. In fact, Connor and Nick met at school, and they were the Otago debating team, but at school, and they're still doing it in their spare time. So please give Nick a big welcome. Nick.
Can everyone hear me properly? Is this on? Wonderful. This better? Yeah, that seems better. So I also buy books online, but the reason I do it is if I go down to Whitcoulls or some other bookstore and I'm looking for a new book that's published in the US or published on a particular subject, if I've got a fascination for, say, a particular area of history, it's not normal for a bookshop to have books that deal with that particular topic and the exact one I want. If there's an author who I know is very good about writing about Persia in the 1100s, Whitcoulls doesn't stock that because I am probably the only person in Dunedin who would actually buy it. But Amazon does, and will get it to me for the price of $20 or so.
Or so.
It's $20 when I last looked. I'm still hideously poor and still can't really afford it, but I buy it anyway because I can. And that's something that the digital flood and the internet allows me to do that I otherwise would never be able to achieve. And that's been fantastic for me in my university career, but also fantastic in just opening up so many doors that otherwise would remain forever closed to me, simply because of where I am. So to talk about the connectivity that Connor talked about in his speech a bit more, particularly with how it affects you and your ability to make a change and talk to people internationally. Across the university, our debating society is hosting an international tournament for Australasian women. All of that has been organised online. I do not know how our women could have been able to organise that if they had to send letters or telegrams or international phone calls across to Sydney, to Malaysia, to India, to Korea, and try to corral everyone. That seems just nightmarish to me. Like, I struggle to phone up people who I know and live just across town, phone in Korea or Malaysia or India and try to convince them to come to Otago to yell at some people about various topics for 2 days. Just seems impossible. But because we've got the internet, because we've got Facebook groups and email chains, we're able to connect to people and organise things like that, to fly hundreds of people into Dunedin right here to have those sort of events. And that event happens every year in Sydney, in Melbourne, in here, in Auckland, in Korea. And those events simply could not happen without the internet. But moreover, in university work and on my grades, Mark's mentioned the assignment that he's got us slaving away at the moment. That assignment works entirely online for me. I've written 50,000 words. If I had to write that by hand, I would probably die. But the best part about this is all of my work is online and backed up. So if my computer gets lost or destroyed, or if my handwritten notes disappear, I can just log on to any computer and have it all there. It doesn't just go away, it's all saved permanently. And that's a massive relief, because trust me, if you're running up to exams and your computer crashes and all of your notes are gone, it's not a very fun time. But moreover, to talk about that assignment a bit more because I can and because Mark's right there. A portion of this assignment isn't on New Zealand law, but because Mark presumably hates us, he said it on international law of 2 different states in the United States. Our library doesn't have much on US law, and especially doesn't have much on property law in Philadelphia and Louisiana. But all of their law is online. I can just go and look it up and actually have something to say about it, rather than just saying, I have no clue what's here, please give me an OK grade anyway. But I can be even lazier than that, because if I want to, and I have, I can literally just annoy US lawyers on Twitter until they give me the answer, and then just put that in my assignment. So I don't need to worry about the fact that I don't know US law or haven't been trained at all, because internationally I can reach out to people and just harangue them until they give me the answers that they want. And that's what the digital flood has let me do, that otherwise I'd have to write handwritten letters. And you can pester people online real easy. It's a bit harder to pester when you're using pen and ink and have got to actually pay for postage and the rest of it. But now let's talk about time management and self-discipline. Because the previous speaker was talking about the benefits of stepping back from the digital flood and allowing yourself some time. But the best part about all of this is you get to choose exactly how much you want to buy into. You can choose if you want to get notifications, or if you just want to choose to log on every week or so and check to see who's messaged you. You can choose whether you want to have a phone that's always online all the time and all of your friends can contact you through, or if you want to just turn it off and leave it in the corner for an hour. The digital flood doesn't force you to always be connected to everyone and to allow anyone to bug you whenever they want, but it allows you to choose how much you want to buy into and how much people can actually message you and contact you. Because back in the day, I heard that phones used to be plugged into walls and all the rest of it. I am very young. You didn't have a choice then. You could only be contacted if you were near your phone. And if you were going walkabout, if one of your friends was studying in the library, say, or taking books out, they basically couldn't be got hold of. But if I want to organise something, if I want to go out for lunch after my lecture to treat myself a bit because I love Korean and can't cook it for myself, I can just message all of my friends at university, find a couple of them that are free, and just go and do that, because it opens up options that otherwise wouldn't really exist. But moreover, if you are always online and always distracted, you're going to suffer for that. So what this teaches people to do is it teaches people how to use distractions and entertainment responsibly and in a way that's actually going to help them. Because if I waste all the time I should be spending on my assignment talking to people on Facebook and don't get it done till the week beforehand, I can't write 50,000 words in 7 days, and that means that I can't get my assignment done. So people learn how to manage themselves when it comes to the internet. But that management and that self-discipline and that training, that extends to all areas of your life. If you learn how to allocate your time so you can get the work that you need to get done properly, and if you learn that at an early age and whiz through things such as mobile phones and such as computers and such as laptops and all of the internet, you're going to have a much better and more productive life, because this teaches you how to responsibly approach your life in an adult fashion and figure out what you want to do and how you want to use what you've been given. The flood isn't a flood, it's an enormous range of opportunities that you're given that you can select from, like you're browsing at the supermarket. A wide range of choices being given to you doesn't hurt you. It really opens so many more doors that would otherwise remain forever closed to you. Because I mentioned at the start of my speech that I'm interested particularly in medieval history. But the only reason that I know that I'm interested in that, if the internet allowed me to research it and find out facts about it and find out that I truly was interested in it, if I didn't have that, I would have just had to have been lucky and chanced upon it, browsing in the library or something that far fewer people do, because Connor talked about the benefits of getting articles shared to you from your friends who think that they might be interested to you. But that means that you get to find out what things truly interest you and what you're very passionate about earlier, faster, and just at all. Because if you're given a small range of options and you don't have a lot of time, and going to the library is time-consuming and difficult, and you've got to carve out an hour or so to do it, to browse the selection, to find something that looks interesting, and then to read it. The difference between that and just having a 5-minute article on Facebook that you click through, read through, and are done from the comfort of your own home, when you're on the bus, when you've got time to kill is massively different, and that allows you to have, as I've said before, so many more options. What the internet overall does is connects you to opportunities to develop yourself and to develop and assist and work with others, both domestically and internationally, and that's enormously useful for absolutely everyone. Thank you.
Well done. Well done, Rick. You don't become a lawyer, you'll be hired by Amazon, Google and Facebook as their spokesperson. It almost convinced me that I should be doing this stuff now. It's brilliant, well done. Now we come to another great New Zealand icon. We're very fortunate here today. I'm sure many of you know Marion Hobbes. She's a very famous New Zealander. On West Coast, you don't get better than that. She was a wonderful teacher, headmistress, a wonderful politician, a government minister, and I think in recent times, I just want to acknowledge the fact that she has given clear character. I think the media has been nasty to clear character. We all make mistakes, but they've been brutal and nasty. And the person standing beside her, in fact, shielding her from all this nasty stuff, has been Marion Hobbes. And I love that about you, Marion. You get up here and fight for people. So well done.
Now, darlings, can you hear me? Good. It's just that I get tired of kind of digital noises through. I have to confess to something straight up. I read this moot as not waving but drowning, youth, age and the digital divide. And I immediately took umbrage. All right? And I'll explain why I took umbrage. I was puzzled by linking of Stevie Smith's brilliant poem, Not Waving But Drowning, to the topic of digital divide. First up, I want to observe I am waving and I am not drowning in anything. I also want to say that the first action this morning was to wave to a friend on a Facebook message. I'm not that old. Okay, I also can't help but notice, and I don't know whether you noticed, but our young friends have all got their notes on paper.
Well done, well done.
And they use pens, okay? And I've done, what does it say here? Oh, that's right. Somebody said that they could, and there was me, the former minister, they could send me lots of messages and drive me mad by sending me lots of messages. What they don't know is with this digit, I can delete. Just this high. So, although I love that poem, I want to dispense with it and concentrate on this concept of digital divide. First of all, the word digit. Thanks, Pat. Numbers, 0 to 9. It's also finger, thumb, and I can't show you but my toe as well. Trouble with the fingers is that they can be misinterpreted, can't they? That's always the problem, and there's always things. Digital, the adjective, I did Latin and Greek at school. One meaning is about signals and data, and the other one is digital versus analog, particularly as applied to clocks. And therein does lie a story. Were you kids taught to read an analog clock at school? Oh well, you're not that young then. It worries me witless because you get on a station and one thing that does happen is my eyesight has gone, well, sorry darlings, my eyesight is going. And I get really confused by a 6, an 8 and a 9 on a digital clock on a station. But I can still see it in analog form. And that drives me mad. So digital divide is a catchphrase that sounds sexy and doesn't always bear examination. And I'm going to take it apart. The ridiculous assumption in this moot is that age somehow defines a digital divide. I have to say that that's myopic. It's egocentric view perpetrated by some young and sometimes used by people as a manipulation to get help or attention. So you say, oh, woe is me, I can't understand this, and everyone leads to your help. They don't actually will explore that. There are far more serious issues in the use of modern communication technology based on digits. First of all, there is a divide between rural and city. Yes, we do have rural broadband, and one of you said you where connectivity is everywhere. Well, you weren't in Haast last summer. No connectivity has just been put in there. There are areas of New Zealand where you can't get connectivity. In fact, Orokonui is one of them, and we have a real problem. If somebody trips over an Orokonui, they have to physically send someone up the track to say that someone's tripped over because you can't use the phones. Okay? So there is a real problem with connectivity. The other thing is that I have Jemima. Jemima is my camper van. I love it to bits. I can't move her at the moment because I've got to make a 12-point turn to get out of where I parked. But other than that, she's wonderful. I have a modem in my camper van because I live online. Sorry, Pep, I do live online. But I always have to park very carefully. I have to line up away from trees. I have to line up where the towels may be. Well, that's great. I can shift Jemima, but if I live in a house somewhere, I can't shift the house to get the same connectivity. We do have a real problem in the divide between rural and city, which may be quite interesting listening to these young men over here about that. They assumed that connectivity. The other one is between rich and poor. And you and I will understand this, Pat, very strongly about what happens to kids who are deprived access. I actually count up that it costs me, and I know I'm a bit excessive on this, but it's $200 a month to obtain the connectivity I want. Okay, and the speed I want. That's a lot of money. That's a divide. That's a real divide if you can't communicate that way. And that's without talking about what you listed, Helen, the costs of the actual capital items, the cost of the different devices. And then there's this divide. It's between those who can discriminate and those who accept the first entry on Google page. Year 11, this was some time ago, and I was teaching about research, and this child wrote me a whole lot on stomach cancer. I thought, God, her vocabulary has really improved. She decorated the pages with wonderful drawings around the end, but she had copied the lot, word for word, for the first entry on that particular kind of cancer on Google, on the first entry into it. So I've always been very worried about, and I continue to be, as we all are, when we look at what's happening in the States, or in our own countries, and democracy. When people believe the first thing that they see online and don't question it. I'm not assuming that of you people, but it is something that worries me hugely. Do you know, it's absolutely frightening to know the number of people who think that the earth is flat. You know, even say, did I hear this the other day, even say that when you go on a plane and you can see the curvature of the earth, they say, no, that's just the kind of windows they put on the plane. The other digital divide is between the confident and those shy of change. So I went to Avonside Girls High in about 1987, I think it was, and as they were taking me through as a new principal in the school, I came across 6 computers with doilies on them. They were dusted regularly. They were never used. And I realized I had a problem. I had a problem with 900 girls who wanted to enter into this world and who were not being, having access or learning anything about it. I went to the computer science department headed by a woman at the University of Canterbury. Sorry, I'm Canterbury from that point of view.
That's all right.
And she said to me, Marion, it's a girls' school, isn't it? Right, well, we better get Apple or Mac at that time because they're the only ones with the drop-down menus. This was some time ago. You might know that there were times and they didn't have drop-down menus. And we did. So I lined up all the staff to get them coached and learnt so that they could access them, night after night, a couple of nights a week. You know, teachers only work from 9 to 3. And poor Judith Nib, she's a real person. She'll forgive me for saying this. The person said, pick up your mouse. She leapt onto the chair. Those are those who connected. It's too easy to argue that the divide is between those over 60 and those younger. think of archivists. Archivists today who are dealing with the question of how do we preserve stuff that was written online 40 years ago, and the whole work that they have to do in that area. They're not young. I've never met very many young archivists, but they are dealing with some of the complex material about how do you conserve records in a digital age, and doing it brilliantly. It could be just as easily, by the way, be between those who read instructions and those who don't. The other day, I've just shifted house, and I asked for some help from some lovely men to help me put the dryer upside down on a wall instead of on the floor. That was fabulous. I found the instruction manual. No, we don't need the instruction manual. Look at that. About an hour later, when they were testing it, they said, oh, the air actually comes out the front. We didn't have to put that tube in the back. And I thought, dear God, preserve me. Well, this is the thing about reading instruction manuals. And the other one was this one. I had the Wi-Fi coming into the house, into the new house I shifted. I followed all the things on Vodafone. It said I had to connect a wire into a local area network plug there, and then take it and put into a local area network one there. So long as I put one into LAN 1 and into LAN 1. It didn't work. So I, in the end, rang a ninja. For those of you who don't know, Vodafone has ninjas. All with good New Zealand accents. This particular and lovely ninja finally said to me, actually, could you not put it in the local area network? Could you take it out and put it into the wide area network? I forbore to say, your instructions, mate, told me to put it into the local area network. I am not mad, but why do I have to assume, without your written instructions in front of me, what to do? The irritation is not about the technology, but the often poorly written directions on how to use the said technology. Okay? That's not the division for me. That's a division of communication. So let's abandon the patronising assessment that those over 60 are intimidated by and scared of modern technology. It's perfectly legitimate to say, no, I don't want it. My life is wonderful as it is. I sweetly have children, grandchildren, growing up in California, and I see them almost every day online through Skype. Thank God. It's something that I just adore. I watch it. I learned her first sentence, which was, Daddy farts. I do that daily. So let's focus on, and both my children are in IT, by the way. Both know that they need to be able to communicate. They wouldn't be my children if they didn't. In all the modes. Claire, who is a lawyer, has now retrained as an editor over there and edits online, earns her money online. My son has just devised a wonderful game for young children. But that is their life. But they know first of all and foremost, so that's what I want to focus on. We focus instead on all-round excellent communication, despite what method of communication is being used. And we will be a better society.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for we're getting so many really invigorating and inspiring insights into the digital world. Keegan, you are the last speaker. Keegan Burrow is also a Dunedin young man, went to Logan Park High School. With Connor, not with Connor, he's a bit slightly older. And he's also here, he's doing a PhD in food science, which is very important for our future. So please welcome Keegan, who's going to be the final speaker.
Okay, everyone hear me? Yep. So I think there's a few things I'll cover here, and I am going to pull out myself. It's a habit we've been taught in debating, is to always time yourself.
Stopwatch.
Yep. But what I'm going to say first of all is I think there's something really important around the internet and it's not just about the internet, it's something that is required in life, and that is something about responsibility. Because something like the internet is just like a car. If you don't know how to drive a car, you get into it, you're going to crash. And the same is about the internet, is that if you don't know how to use the internet, or you don't know how to use that connectivity, you're going to have problems, you're going to have trouble. Now, that divide may not necessarily be across age, and I'll admit I probably spend more time trying to help my dad use the internet than I actually do having to try and help my grandparents use the internet. And I regularly get phone calls from my father in particular trying to ask me how things actually work. But I think something really important to note is there is a bit of responsibility on everyone to try and work together to not only make sure that everyone can engage and can swim in this digital age, but also to make sure that everybody understands that they've got to be respectful and got to work towards that into the future, because the internet's not going to stop, and this digital flood isn't going to get any less than what it is now. And you can already see that where they're doing things such as putting fridges and microwaves that connect to your cell phone, or TVs that you can turn on by voice activation in the other room. That the internet is only going to get more and more persuasive, and this flood is only going to get more and more intense. So there's a responsibility on both us young people to make sure that going forward we do maximise that connectivity, and we do make sure that everyone can actually use the internet the best way they can. But I think there's something else to note in terms of that responsibility is about just people using the internet, and this is something that obviously everyone sees all the time when we simply see what's going on with the American president and Twitter, is that people need to remember that the internet isn't filtered. It isn't like writing into the ODT and having the editor have the ability to, just not publish your letter. Is that everyone's point of view is important, but having that responsibility to think about what view you're putting forward and whether it's constructive. So that's just a wee bit of a touch. But second of all, I think I want to note just how the internet is changing the world and the world around us in ways that no one can ever imagine. Because it may surprise some of you, but one of the largest growing industries in the world happens to be online gaming. And once again, talking about the news, people have probably heard things about this game called Fortnite and how it can be seemingly kids draining parents' bank accounts. But online gaming and recreation for people has grown massively. It's now bigger than Hollywood. Esports and a game called League of Legends, which, yes, its acronym is LOL, sadly. It's one of the biggest and fastest growing sporting competitions in the world. It's getting to a point where it is getting live coverage on TV, on ESPN and on American sports. It's got bigger funding than any sporting competition we have in New Zealand. And these development and these sports and these games and all of this entertainment is just new opportunities. And there's this classic vision that video games are one of two things. They're all either horrible, graphic, and not really good for people's engagements, or they're just for young people to sit in their rooms and waste their time rather than doing their schoolwork. But their ability to escape and the entertainment they provide, which is so much more unique and beneficial than anything that we can sort of see or engage, is really important. And I live with people who do probably spend far too much time playing video games, but the ability to have the ability to not only just sit down and watch TV, like I admit as a kid I often did at dinner with my parents, but to be able to talk to...
I think the battery might be flat, yeah.
Okay, well, there's the one down there.
Okay, that's better. The ability to talk to my friends on the internet while playing a game, the ability to do that and connect with other individuals, as Nick was saying, from all over the world and be playing with people in China or people in Europe or people in America means that we're less isolated in regards of our point of views and of those interactions. So I think it's really important to note that the availability and the entertainment opportunities of the internet are available, but I want to say that they're not limited just to us young people. And there is, I can't remember the name of the game specifically, but one of the world's biggest research projects on things such as on dementia has actually come out of a video game. It's the study that they're running, that they're using this free-to-play video game to get people from all ages to play this game. They're collecting this data, and they're using it to measure and determine the effects of dementia and the likelihood as you grow older from getting dementia by replaying these games and to be engaging with this. The internet and all of these technologies is providing us this opportunity. But once again, it comes down to the responsibility. It comes down to the responsibility of those people playing those video games to make it a friendly environment and to be sporting, just like you would be on the cricket pitch or the rugby field, to shake hands with that person at the end of that game and just be a nice person. It's the responsibility of those researchers to actually use that data that people are freely giving them to actually engage and to benefit other individuals' lives. It's the responsibility of you not to post those horrible posts on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, or to not make those terrible videos. I think something that's really important to note is the internet itself isn't bad. It is an opportunity, but just like every opportunity, it's how you engage with it and how you deal with it. And you may decide that dealing with it is going to be taking that step back. You may decide that dealing with it is going to be running headlong into it and living with a cell phone and only watching Netflix and only, carrying out all of your communication electronically. But that's the choice that you have to make, and you've got to be aware of that. And I think it's the responsibility of everyone to make sure that they don't leave anyone behind who wants to get on board. I remember it when I was at intermediate, actually. I was in a very, very lucky class. And this was slightly younger than these other people where computers were really coming into schools. And our class got access to the school laptops. And there was this trolley that they would roll into the room. And it had a class set of laptops that could connect to the internet, and we had access to all of these different games and all of these different teaching services as well, from being able to learn how to build websites to be able to look on Wikipedia and do research. And having that opportunity and having that equality that everyone in that class could actually engage and do that, rather than requiring kids and parents to go out and bring their own laptop to school or have their cell phone or expecting people to go home and do that. That's the sort of responsibility that bringing everyone on board into this digital age is going to be. Because there's no point in leaving anyone behind, because if one person is drowning in this digital flood, that's going to result in all of the rest of us having problems all the way through. So what we need to do is make sure we're teaching people how to swim, rather than hoping that we can throw out the life raft and pull them back in afterwards.
Well done. Thank you, Keegan. Very important. I just want to share with you two very brief digital stories of my own. Yesterday I heard Ian Taylor. You all know Ian Taylor, runs the big digital animation. Well, Ian's famous for the cricket, where you get the LPWs and you get the ball tracking, the ball tracking from cricket. Well, Ian was telling you how it happened, and this is how the digital age works. It's very, very funny. It was run by Hawkeye in England originally, and Ian got a call from India saying, "Hello, Ian. We'd very much like to have a ball tracking in Indian cricket." And Ian said, we've got a tournament in 8 weeks. Can you come up with a program? So Ian got together with all his team, and they did everything they could. They actually used Jaffas on a board to work out how it would all work and all the rest of it. They flew across to India, set it all up, and it didn't work. But they're in India, Ian said, and the guy said, "Doesn't matter, Ian, we can just make it up. It'll be fine. No one will know this." So the program you showed was totally made up. It wasn't what was really happening at all. And then 10 weeks later they got it to work, and from then on he's been famous ever since with using it. But just goes to show you can't always believe what you see. And I've been looking up the digital age to find out about a couple of islands. Did you know that in the Canary Islands there are no canaries? And did you know that in the Virgin Islands there are also no canaries? So I think we've had a very, very high quality debate today, and I think we've had probably all the point of views covered, from the point of view of being responsible, from the point of view of not leaving people behind, which was very, very important. Hearing the various uses, the connectivity that we have. And I'm probably in Pat school. I like it being used for me from time to time, but basically I want to be away from it as much as I can. I really admire the Marions of this world that can actually get on top of it and can even plug the things in themselves. I've got no idea how to probably electrocute themselves doing it. But I think you're right. We all use this stuff in various ways. We don't realise it, but we do. Because you email, Pat. I know you don't email. No, you don't. Good on you. One of the last non-emailers. We deliver things by hand to you, don't we?
I write, I put it in an envelope, and I put a stamp.
Must put those, and hope those things never die. They won't as long as you're around, Pat. It's great. So can you please join with me and thank these people who have given up their time. These students have got big assignments to do. He's got another 50,000 words to do this week and get it finished. The students, because I think it's been fantastic. We've learned a lot. Can you please give them a great applause? And thank you for being a really good audience. You engaged, you listened, you laughed at the right times. Sometimes the wrong times, it doesn't really matter. But it was brilliant, so thank you. Please feel welcome to come up and ask any questions of the panel. Thank you very much.